everyone, Krista Moser here. Today I'd like to show you just a little trick, something that I've been working on, how to turn my scraps into cute blocks and then those blocks into fun quilts. So a lot of what I do is strip quilting. So you cut blocks from strip sets and then you have these little odds and ends left over. So this is pretty common in some of my patterns where you just kind of end up with the ends of the strips. And these are angled pieces, and don't throw those out. This is something that you can actually use, and I'm going to show you what I've been doing with them. Of course, the quilts behind me are a combination of blocks that I made from these and some orphan blocks. So when I'm doing demos and that sort of thing, I end up with extra blocks from some of my other patterns. So here we have the bumblebees from Bumblebee Blossom. So that's one of my patterns. And then this one is the flower block from the Ladybug Bloom pattern. So I've combined some of these concepts, and I'll just show you what I've been doing. So using up your scraps. So if you've got strip sets that you've cut all your blocks from and now you have these end pieces, my strip sets in this case were 6.5 inches from edge to edge. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler. Now this is the large 60-degree diamond ruler, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to true it up or square it off here so that I can add another side, making it a full triangle. So I'm going to turn the ruler on the side here. This is a funky little cut, and it actually doesn't have to be all that accurate because we will do a trim up later. But what I'm using, if you look down the middle of the ruler, there are 2 dashed lines on either side of a solid black center line. So I'm using the left dashed line, and I'm just running it along the angled edge of this cut. And I'm giving myself just as much room as I can. So I'm looking for about a 1/2 inch across the top here. I can scoot the ruler up, and it gets even wider here at the top. And I'm just going to kind of trim it up like this. So that's good. I'll grab another one here. These are all different, because depending on what fabric you used and how long the strips were. So they don't have to be, any specific size so much. What we're looking for is this is a 60-degree angle and this needs to be trued up square. I've got a few more here to do. And just the left dashed line. Really, I'm just looking for at least maybe a 1/2 inch or so there. You can trim all of this, and these are true scraps. That's junk. You can throw those out. You have my permission. Okay, so here we're going to do a couple more. You notice all of my scraps here were from the Biggie the Bee quilt, so they're black and white. And I'm going to pair that with creating another side to each of these triangles. So the way I'm doing that is I'm actually taking rectangles. So you cut your rectangles different sizes. In this case, the 6.5 inch block at 6.5 inches this way by 4 5/8 this way. So that's all you need to know. Now I've got some with stripes going up and down, and then I did some with stripes going side to side. So that'll get 2 different looks, which is kind of fun. So from here, to do the right side of the block. So what I already got myself from the scraps was essentially the left side of a block. Now I need a right side. So I'm going to take this 6.5 by 4 5/8, and I'm going to, same line, the left dashed line here, the 6.5 inch line, that's a triangle line, it's also dashed. You can see the triangle bubbles, say 6.5 here. So the left dashed line on the left side of the solid center line, and that's going to get me 2 half triangles that are going the same direction. So I compare those here and here, just like this. These will get sewn together. I press that seam open. That seems to make for a really flat block, and then we'll trim it down after that. So I'm going to cut a couple more from the stripe that goes the other way, and you will see just how different it looks. Alright, so now this block is going to get the stripe going side to side, just like this. Now if you're doing the right side, or if you've got a right side of a block that you have from your scraps and you want to cut the left side, what I just did was cut the right side. If you want to cut the left side, you can put the ruler on the other side of the block, or you can just flip your piece over and cut from the wrong side. That's probably the easiest thing to do, especially if you get into the habit and you want to be consistent. You can just turn those blocks over, and then you're going to end up with the cut going the opposite direction. Okay, so those are going to get paired up and sewn together and pressed open. So I've actually done that to a few things. Here are my blocks that you can see. I had some that I had the right side as a piece, and the left side ended up as my cut rectangle. And then this one is the reverse of it. So you've got two options here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim these down. So that's why it doesn't really matter. That first cut, you can kind of make it big. As a matter of fact, it's kind of better if you make it big, because then we can just trim it down. So here is what I'm going to do. Taking the ruler, now I'm going to use the solid center line up the middle of the ruler. And I'm just going to center it right on that seam. So the seam's been sewn and pressed open. The 6.5 inch triangle line comes across the bottom. Don't have much to trim off here, but I do on this side. And just clean it up. So that's good. Now another one. 6.5 inch line across the bottom. Solid center line right up the seam. And I'm just trimming anything that kind of hangs over. A few more like this. Okay. And these are going to get paired with another orphan block that I have. So you guys may have seen my snowflake lane pattern, which produces a snowflake block. Here it is. So it seems to work perfectly. The scale of this small snowflake from the snowflake lane pattern is a 12-inch finished hexagon, which is exactly the same size as these bees and these flowers. And my triangle blocks that I've now made end up as 6.5 inch or 6-inch finished triangles. So the math just works between those two, and I can create rows this way. So I will use a couple of my orphan snowflake blocks and then some of my created black and white triangle units, and I can just, as long as I keep these as two halves, I can just create rows like this. So that's what I've done here. I've done triangle, 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 so here's my pieced ones, and I fit them in with solid background triangles that I just cut. Those are also cut as 6.5 inch triangles, so the scale of everything stays consistent. So just like this, you're making rows all the way across. So I'm going to line these up. You can change the arrangement however you like the look. And then the next row down would happen, and maybe I would change to doing, you know, the stripes go side to side here, so maybe I want some up and down for the next one. You could just continue creating rows as you like. This, of course, on a design wall. Get a lot of your blocks laid out, and then you're sewing them with their background blocks into rows. So a really fun concept. You basically turn junk or something you would have just thrown out into rows like this. You can use up some orphan blocks as long as the math works between the two. So this is a 12-inch block and a 6-inch block, and you get the combination. What I thought I'd show you next is an 8-inch block and a 4-inch block. So I have some more orphan blocks and some more scraps. So let me just stack these and put them to the side, and you can kind of see what I'll do with the next ones. So that one that I just showed you requires the large ruler, because this gets you a 6.5 inch. It actually gets you up to an 8.5 inch. But if you don't have the large ruler and you actually have the mini ruler, this size you can do with the mini ruler. So I have some of these blocks. These are really cute little pinwheels that I did in a demo. And these actually came from the wreath quilt pattern, which is a Christmas quilt. But I did it in red, white, and blue, this pinwheel, instead of the green and red. And so I thought I would just build some blue blocks that go with that. So here's some of my wedges that I cut from 4.5-inch strip sets. So those blocks are 8.5 inches. They'll finish at 8. And my strip sets for my offcuts were 4.5, some things that I gathered up. So here again, here's the end of my strip, a nice little piece. I'm going to turn the ruler to the side here, again with the left dashed line, and I'm just cutting myself kind of a generous sized wedge. And then this one I'm going to pair with plaid. So I have some rectangles that are 3 3/8 by 4.5. So this wide by 4.5 tall, and then the same cut. So here's what I'm doing. The left side of the ruler, or the left dash line, and the 4.5-inch line here. So it's down the left side, a 1/4 inch offset from that solid center line. The 4.5-inch line across the bottom, and that gets me to right side wedge triangles or half triangles. So that will work to fill in for the halves that I have stacked up. So I'll do another one of those cuts. My plaid fabric. And I'll just pair these up with those. So of course I have some of those already done. Here they are. Press that seam open so it's nice and flat. Now I'm going to cut these down to a true 4.5-inch triangle. So the 4.5-inch line across the bottom and the solid center line right up that middle seam. Oops. Just like this. Just trim, trim, trim. The nice thing about using this mini ruler is you can lop off those outside tips, and that really does help remove the bulk from your intersections when you join the blocks together. We'll do one more like this. So then the fill-in background triangles for this size would also be 4.5. Okay, so we have a pile of those just here. So here, you can see I've done quite a few. Some of them I had enough to just do a whole triangle, so why not throw it in there? That's something I did on this one. You see, I used some that weren't even halves. Nothing is wasted. Okay, so when we're doing this now with the layout, scoot these aside. Kind of the same thing. If you're able to keep your orphan blocks in halves, then you can just build rows around them. There is a way to do it if you can't keep them in halves. If you've sewn them all as a hexagon, in the case of the B block, that's the way it ends up. And so I actually did a blog on this whole process, and in the blog I demonstrated how to take a hexagon and fit it into triangle units without doing Y seams. So I will put a link to that in the description box so you can go see more of a step-by-step of just how that all works. Okay, so here, and then maybe another block I'll put in here. I'm not sure how big this quilt will be once I get all my blocks done. I start laying them out. We will do like one here. Maybe I'll just put another one in here. And so, when this gets to be sewn together, I have 4 of these pinwheel orphan blocks, so this could be a nice little baby quilt or even a table runner if I spread it out. So the way this is going to work, maybe half of it being like here. Here's row 1. So you've got half the block plus triangle units, and the fill-in triangle units I'll lay in there and sew them to each other. And then row 2 is going to be the next one with half of the block of the top here and the bottom half of that block. Row 3, row 4, row 5. And that's the way the assembly works, so it's really slick. Goes pretty fast too, and you get to use up all your extra stuff. So that's really fun. Okay, so what I've done, like I said, I did a blog a few weeks ago on the process of making this very quilt and how I had done it, which would apply to this one as well because the scale is very much the same. But if you've got 4.5-inch blocks or 4.5-inch strip sets, and then of course that fits with the 8.5-inch blocks, I went ahead and did some PDFs. So these are free printables, and I just did the math for you for the cuts of what you need for the other half of those units. And then a little illustration of how to cut them. So we've got an 8-inch finished block, which is the size of this pinwheel. So I labeled different blocks that will work with the 4-inch triangles and the patterns that they come from. So you could go through and see if you have those patterns, you could pull that block out, or if you've got extra pieces from that, pull those together. So that one is an 8.5-inch finished hexagon, that then the offset block is a 4-inch. Then we have a 12-inch finished, which is the ones behind me, and their offset blocks are 6-inch. And then we have the 16-inch blocks, and their offsets are 8.5 inches. So those are the 3 basic sizes. So you get different blocks that fit with different sizes, and I'll put a link to these as printables in the description box, so you can just print them off, go to your stash, go to your scraps, and see what you can pull together. I hope you found this fun and interesting, and I'm excited to see what you come up with. I would love to see pictures. Thanks for watching.